This is Nina Maria Potts reporting from London, and you're watching World Risk and Insurance News, the video news network for the global insurance community.
From our news bureaus around the globe, this is World Risk and Insurance News. In this and future broadcasts of WRIN, we'll focus on the news and information shaping today's risk, insurance and financial service industries. We'll bring you directly to the major insurance markets from around the world with interviews from industry leaders, the late breaking news and reports from industry events. If it affects the industry, you'll find us talking about it here on World Risk and Insurance News. Now for our top story.
The rendezvous in Monte Carlo. Each year, industry executives convene on the French Riviera amidst the trappings of high society to discuss the forthcoming one-to-one renewal period for reinsurance. In recent years, as the global financial crisis emerged, industry cat losses were relatively modest, capital swelled, and prices remained relatively soft. But this year things are different. The continuing effects of the weakened global economy, record losses from earthquakes and the tsunami in Asia, as well as an active tornado and tropical storm season in the US, all are putting increased pressure on industry earnings. I sat down with Chris Klein, head of Guy Carpenter's sales operations and market relationships in London, for a preview of the Monte Carlo rendezvous.
The Monte Carlo preview is brought to you by Guy Carpenter.
Monte Carlo is a curiosity for many in the industry, the senior executives, the glamour, the parties. What really happens at the rendezvous?
Well, of course, Monte Carlo is a thoroughly agreeable place to be, especially in September. And yes, the impression could be one long round of parties. And we do stay in nice hotels and eat in fine restaurants. But I think the truth is really rather more prosaic than that. In essence, you tend to have a lot of brokers chaperoning their clients around with meetings with reinsurers in a fast round of meetings in various locations that sort of last 30 minutes. So it's the first cut. People are probing and trying to find out what they think is going to happen at the renewal, with various functions going on in the side. And of course, well, for underwriters, there's always the opportunity to do a bit of practical risk selection and pricing in the casino.
Each year, prices are top of mind at the rendezvous. What are the drivers of price, especially this year?
This year, there are strong supply factors. When we went into the year, we had a situation where there was excess capital in the industry, and that was reflected by a weakening of prices at the 1st of January renewal. Of course, since then, we have had a string of major catastrophes, natural catastrophes, in the Asia-Pacific region, and also in the United States with the tornadoes and latterly storms. So there have been some substantial losses there which have eroded some of the surplus capital that we thought was in the industry. But we still think the industry has excess capital, but budgets for catastrophes are tight for the rest of the year. So there was some softening in some lines. At mid-year there was some increases in loss-affected areas. But we're in a bit of a waiting game at the moment.
The industry experienced significant losses in the early part of this year. Now with Hurricane Irene and Katia, there's already a buzz about prices hardening. Will they?
Well, I mean, that is the question that everyone is asking. At mid-year there was some hardening, particularly in loss-affected areas. To put some perspective on this, estimates are running at about 70 to 75 billion US dollars of cat losses in the first half of this year. I mean, that's an enormous amount. That is more than the total cat losses for 2009 and 2010 combined. So very, very substantial. Add to that the fact that a lot of those losses have been in what we call cold spots, not peak zones, so they did not have capital loadings as you would for, say, the Gulf of Mexico or California quake or a Tokyo quake peril. So the pricing for those losses, for those perils, was perhaps less than one would have hoped for in retrospect. So will prices move up? We're waiting. There is still surplus capital in the business. It has been eroded. Capital growth has stalled, and people will be concerned. We're not through the hurricane season yet.
Chris, you have your finger on the pulse of the industry. Will there be any surprises at this year's rendezvous?
At Monte Carlo, there are all sorts of things that could happen. We perhaps might hear the announcement of a merger or an acquisition or a disposal, a sale, trade sale. So that it's always possible that something like that could happen. There could be a major rebranding exercise. We know that one reinsurer last year did that. There could be someone opening a new line of business or a new facility. Perhaps we'll hear of the retirement of a major personality or character in the business. The rating agencies, the cat modelling agencies could always do something. They could always say something. So there are plenty of potential surprises. A catastrophe could happen as well. And without wanting to sound too somber, I think it is well worth remembering that 10 years ago, when we were all at Monte Carlo, 2 aeroplanes struck the Twin Towers and another 2 aeroplanes attacked the United States. And hundreds of our colleagues and friends and associates in the business lost their lives, in addition to the thousands of others. So yes, the unexpected can always happen at Monte Carlo.
We'll visit with Chris once again after the rendezvous to get his impressions of the meetings, the hot topics, and his forecast for the remainder of the renewal period. And now it's time to span the world for regional news affecting the insurance industry. Here now is the WRINtv Global Roundup.
From Europe. In response to government crackdowns on protesters, including an estimated 2,000 people killed, the EU tightened sanctions on Syria with a ban on imports of oil and other petroleum products. The EU's latest move includes a prohibition on financial or insurance services. From the UK, following merger talks in May, the British Insurance Brokers Association and the Institute of Insurance Brokers released a joint statement responding to the Financial Conduct Authority's approach to regulation, urging the FCA to, quote, take a fresh look, clarify and simplify, unquote. Their opinion and the opinion of many others, quote, regulatory barriers should be lowered, unquote. From the U.S., the International Lease Finance Corporation, the aircraft leasing subsidiary of the American International Group, filed for an initial public offering on this past week. AIG expects to use the cash raised to pay off government debt. From Asia, the East-West Center, in partnership with UNAIDS and other organizations, is leading a modeling effort to better understand health risks across Asia. Their goal, disease prevention, fiscally responsible primary healthcare insurance, a healthy workforce, and implementation of the World Health Organization's international health regulations. And in global news, AM Best announced its top 50 reinsurance groups based on gross premium written. Munich Re, Swiss Re, and Hanover Re maintained their top positions. Berkshire Hathaway moved to number 4, while Lloyd's comes in at number 5.
And that's our global roundup on the world of risk. The attacks on the World Trade Center in 2001 had a devastating impact on people all around the world and within the insurance community in particular, which lost hundreds of people and suffered historic losses. Here's Dr. Robert Hartwig, economist and president of the Insurance Information Institute based in Lower Manhattan, with his thoughts on the impact of September the 11th on the industry 10 years later.
Here we are 10 years after the attack on the World Trade Center, and what you see in front of you is the Liberty Tower going up, soon to be the tallest building in the United States. Well, this is a much more positive sight than what we saw 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, September 11th, 2001, I, like thousands of other people working and living in Lower Manhattan, watched the attack on the Twin Towers with my own eyes, watched the towers fall with my own eyes, felt those towers fall. It's something that I will never forget, and of course, it's an utterly tragic event for those who lost their lives and their loved ones. What I can tell you is 10 years on now, as these buildings rise from the ashes, is that there's been a great response by the people of New York, the people of the United States, and here in the insurance industry. Here we're talking about an event at the time, 10 years ago, which was the largest in world history, producing about $33 billion in insured losses. That's about $40 billion in 2010 dollars. When the attacks occurred 10 years ago, it was the largest single loss in the history of the insurance industry on a global scale. The event was absolutely unprecedented in every single respect, producing the largest property losses ever, the largest workers' compensation losses ever, the largest aviation losses in history. Insurance is a global business, and some 200 insurers wound up sharing in the losses associated with the 9/11 attack. Now, in the immediate aftermath, clearly there was concern that there would be other attacks that would occur very, very closely in succession. And insurers ultimately did partner with the federal government to ensure that there would in fact be terrorism coverage available to make sure, like projects such as the Freedom Tower or coverage on marquee structures around the United States, just not in New York, but such things as power plants and ports and airports and sports stadiums could remain covered in the event of future terrorist attacks. So today we're proud to report that everyone who wants terrorism coverage can in fact buy it. It's available, it's affordable, and this protects businesses and allows major construction projects like the one behind me right now to employ thousands of people around the country and help keep the American economy moving. After 10 years, a lot has been learned, obviously, not only by the insurance industry, but by the American people, by the United States government, governments around the world, and that we'll continue to learn from this experience and continue to hopefully make the world a safer place.
Well, that is our report. This has been Nina Maria Potts for World Risk and Insurance News. Join us again on WRINtv for the latest in video news for the global risk and insurance industry.